Welcome to the place where hope begins, a place where we can find liberty and peace, a place where history was forever changed. Join us as we reflect on the love of God at the place where His love was most keenly shown, at Calvary.
We are back for another episode of the At Calvary podcast, located here at Calvary Baptist Church in Turner, Maine. So excited for everybody listening in. Thanks for joining us here today for episode 10. I'm super honored and privileged to be able to introduce to you a new special guest on this podcast. I had the opportunity a while back to be able to sit down and talk with a man named Brother Mark Holmes. He is a missionary to Nigeria. Brother Holmes and his family have been over there for 20 years. And he has a great ministry going over there in the country of Nigeria, over in Africa. I was beyond excited to be able to talk to him for a while, ask him some questions. And I would like to bring you on this episode today, Brother Holmes' testimony. And he has quite the testimony. And I was just very excited to be able to listen to that and see where God has brought him and how God stirred in his heart to become a missionary, to have a burden for missions. And he's going to give a little bit of his testimony today. So without further ado, I'd love to introduce to you Brother Mark Holmes, missionary to Nigeria.
This is Mark Holmes, and I'm happy to bring a testimony of how the Lord has led us to where we are as missionaries in Nigeria. I grew up in what would be considered a traditional home on the Gulf Coast of Mississippi, and my father and mother and my older brother, we did not grow up in church, but when I was 9 years old, a friend of mine in elementary school invited me to a vacation Bible school. And I got to hear the different Bible lessons and stories that were being told throughout that week. And I went to my mother and asked her about going to church just down the road from our house. And we started going to church there at North Long Beach Baptist Church. My brother soon joined us, and then from time to time, my father would come. My father and I had a great relationship. My father was my hero. He was a pilot for the regional electric company, Southern Company Services, and he would fly the executives to Atlanta, Pensacola, Birmingham, and Gulfport, where we were based out of. On April 10th of 1989, when our family had only been going to church for about 6 months, my father's plane crashed in Pensacola, Florida. And for the first time, I was without my hero. For the first time, I was without the one that I looked up to the most. But also for the first time, I started thinking about eternity and what would happen if I were to die. And where did my father go when he died? And after countless questions, I went to my pastor and asked him how I could know for sure that I could go to heaven. And he came to our home that afternoon, Sunday afternoon, and showed me the gospel and led me to Christ, prayed with me. My mother was sitting right beside me in tears. She knew what was happening. And I got saved. I got baptized about 3 months later. That was when I was 10 years old. And my wife's testimony, she grew up in a Christian home, went to church most all of her life, and asked her mother about being saved when she was 5 years old. She had had some questions and some fears, and her mother led her to Christ. And she joined what became our home church when she was 13 years old, and became very faithful in that church with her family in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. My testimony continued in that I started going to another church in the same area in Mississippi that had a more active youth group, and I had been seeing some teenagers that would invite their friends to church, and I found out that these active young people seemed to all be going to the same church. And I started going to Sharon Baptist Church in Long Beach, and there were a couple of deacons who would listen to Jack Hyles on preaching tapes. And they talked to me about going to a youth conference. And so the summer after my sophomore year in high school, I went to youth conference in First Baptist Church of Hammond, Indiana. And I remember sitting in that youth conference, a large 6,000-seat auditorium, and I heard one of the preachers preach about taking a missions trip to England. And he talked about that he went to different churches while he was there on that trip. And in each church that he went to 3 different churches that did not have a pastor. And he said in a couple of those churches, he would talk to the man who would be filling in the pulpit and teaching the Sunday school class. And they were trying their best. But when they found out that this preacher was a teacher at a Bible college, their countenance changed, and they began begging him to send them a pastor. Would you send us a pastor? We need a pastor. We've got to have a shepherd. And I just remember that when I heard that testimony and I heard that story, out of all those people in that youth conference, it seemed like I was the only one there, and that the Lord was speaking to me and saying, I could use you to do that. I could use you to be a pastor. And I believe that God called me to preach during that youth conference. There wasn't even an invitation given at the end of that sermon, but I knew that God was working on my heart. I didn't know anything about being a missionary. I didn't really even know what it meant to be called to preach. But I started to learn what it meant to surrender my life and just to be able to say to God, whatever you want me to do, that's what I'll do. Wherever you want me to go, that's where I'll go. And whatever you want me to be, that's what I'll strive to be. And so at the end of my high school days, I was still going to the same church, Southern Baptist Church. Graduated from a public school and went straight to Hyles-Anderson College from a convention church. It was quite a cultural adjustment, and the first time I'd ever been in an independent Baptist church, and the first time I'd really heard preaching the way that I did in that youth conference. And so I started studying for pastoral theology. But during that time, there were 5 graduates who were missionaries in Nigeria. And I got to hear their testimonies. During the Sunday night service at First Baptist in Hammond, Indiana, they would often do question and answer with Dr. Hyles, but also they would, anytime that a missionary was in the area, they would give that missionary the time during the early service hour before the evening service and give him a chance to give his testimony and tell about the work that he was doing. So I got to hear testimonies from those missionaries in Nigeria, and also was a part of an ordination service for the missionary that I ended up working with for a year. And that's what I believe God used to really work on my heart about being a missionary. Still completed my degree for pastoral theology. Wasn't really sure about exactly what I was going to do. But also during that senior year of my time at Hyles-Anderson College, Sabrina and I started dating. We had been friends for a couple of years. I'd actually met her at the end of our freshman year at a youth camp where both of our churches would go to. She was from Central Baptist in Baton Rouge. I was started going to Faith Baptist in Gulfport, Mississippi, which would become our sending church. But we became friends over the next few years, dated our senior year, and we were married in 2001. And so as newlyweds, we served in the bus ministry and Sunday schools and children's churches and helped out with the youth group at Faith Baptist Church under Pastor Dan Carr. And that has been our sending church now for 21 years. And that is the church that we served in until we went on deputation. 24 months on deputation, a year with a veteran missionary, and now God has used us over the years as church planting missionaries in Nigeria. We started Truth Baptist Church in 2006, a year after we had come to the field. And that is now the home of our Bible college, Bible institutes, soul winning and leadership conferences, and youth camps that we do in 3 different regions in the country of Nigeria. Nigeria is the most populous country in all of Africa and potentially the most influential. And if we reach Nigeria, we have a real opportunity to be an influence on the whole continent of Africa. Our biggest work that I'm involved in mostly is in training pastors, whether it be in our Bible college or encouraging them in the soul winning and leadership conferences. We do 6 of those every year, or it's helping pastors to start Bible institutes. And so far, we now have nearly 250 graduates in our college, and they have started 65 churches. And so we just thank the Lord for being able to testify about all the way back to being a 10-year-old boy, having questions about eternity, and having that assurance of salvation, and then God calling me to the ministry, my wife being surrendered at a very early age, and then us meeting, marrying, serving God in the local church, and then seeing wonderful things happen on the mission field. And I thank God for the opportunity to tell about it.
Well, what a wonderful testimony Brother Mark Holmes has. So thankful I got to have the opportunity to listen to that personally, and just even the questions I asked him over his ministry for the last 20 years, the stories that he can tell is very great, and I thank God that he is using him over there in the country of Nigeria. What an awesome blessing that is to be able to support somebody to further the gospel over in other areas. That is going to wrap up our episode today. If you'd like to reach out to us, contact us at wytoturner@gmail.com. Otherwise, have a great day. God bless you.